Hi, I'm Olivia Petter. I'm a journalist, host of the Millennial Love podcast, and author of a book by the same name.
I'm Toni Tone. I'm a content creator and author of I Wish I Knew This Earlier, Lessons on Love.
Today, we're going to walk into the world of relationships, talking through everything from recognizing red flags to our tips to rebuilding yourself after leaving a relationship. So, let's get into it. Tell me about your most important breakup.
That was the start of me really finding myself. Like the relationship itself wasn't like a horrible relationship, but I lost a lot of myself in that relationship, and that breakup was the foundation for me like writing my first book. So it was really important for that reason. It basically started my career.
I mean, yeah, if you get a book out of it, it's definitely
Right?
a good thing.
It's a good breakup.
When you said you felt like you lost yourself in that first relationship, what did you mean?
So I guess when I say lost myself, I started like diminishing parts of myself in an attempt to make the other person happy. So like a lot of self-betrayal. And that wasn't even necessarily because they asked me to, but I felt like I had to put them first to my own detriment. And because of that, like I disregarded my wants, my preferences, my desires, my future, my career, because I was like so focused on them and just supporting them and making them happy. And so I just like took life by the horns, and I was just like, I'm gonna do me and be selfish and prioritize my well-being, prioritize my career, prioritize myself. And since that point, I have been the happiest I've ever been.
Do you think that's something that women have to fight harder to do?
Definitely. I think society promotes like this ride or die chick concept, which is so poisonous. Like society expects women to just forego everything they want to do and their entire life to have this partner, to have this relationship, to have this family. And I think relationships are treated like the penultimate achievement when you're a woman. When you're like a little girl, you're literally programmed to find Prince Charming, and it's a massive problem, I think, for women, and just, yeah.
All right, it's time to check in with all of you and see what you've been saying on social media. Oh, this is a really good one that I've actually been thinking about a lot recently. How do you know if you're being love bombed?
You know you're being love bombed when you feel overwhelmed by the grandiosity. Like initially, you're gonna feel it in your gut that this person is doing way too much too soon. I think that's a big sign. Another big indicator is this absence of like reciprocated energy. It's different when you're really, really into someone, they're really into you, and there's this like natural progression. But I think sometimes with love bombers, what they do is try to lure someone in, and that's part of their process, right? To manipulate you into wanting them or wanting to be with them or staying with them.
Yeah, I think listen to your gut, because also love bombing ultimately, like you said, it's about manipulation, but it's also a form of control, isn't it, down the line? Because then it's like, oh, well, you're reliant on that person, and you're kind of waiting to go back to that stage when they are showering you with affection to the point where you then put up with sometimes abusive behavior, because that's ultimately what it is, isn't it? It's a form of emotional abuse, isn't it?
Yeah, and another good indicator on your point is if they hold it over you. So like love bombers will do this grandiose thing, and if they don't feel like you are receptive in the way they want, then it's, oh, but I did XYZ, but I gave you ABC. So I think if they hold it over you, that's another sign. I'm healing from past relationships and want to be single for a while, but I've just met this amazing person. Do I give him a chance or stay in my lane?
I think ultimately if you dive into something before you're ready with another person, then you're just going to end up making the same mistakes that you made in your previous relationship.
Facts.
It's just not a good idea. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, if you have found someone that you really like and see a future with, but you're not ready, the best thing to do is just be honest with them about that and say, look, I really like you and I do see a potential future with you, but right now I'm not in the best headspace for a relationship.
Tell us about one red flag you always find yourself ignoring.
Okay, so the red flag I think I always find myself ignoring is quite a complicated one, but I think it's really hard to spot, and it's that I often find myself leaning towards narcissistic men.
Wow, that's a big red flag.
Yeah, obviously narcissism is a huge red flag, but it's really difficult to spot, I think, because I think narcissists tend to be very good at disguising who they are. And it's really important to kind of look out for things like love bombing, and look out for things like when someone is kind of showing you a bit too much too early on that you do feel uncomfortable with. So yeah, it is quite a big one. It's quite complicated.
It is. Would you say that there are any other ways to like sense someone is slight or displaying elements of narcissism?
You know, the obvious things are someone who doesn't really show that much of an interest in your life, and doesn't really, you know, isn't interested in hanging out with you and your friends, isn't interested in what you do, isn't interested in kind of engaging in the hobbies and activities that you want to do. It's just kind of always finding a way for you to slot into their life, as opposed to kind of amalgamating them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, Toni, how do you recognize red flags?
I think one way to recognize them is to really pay attention to how people leave you feeling, as well as how they leave other people feeling. So as an example, one red flag may be someone who demonstrates a lack of respect to anyone outside of their inner circle, right? They may treat you well as far as you're concerned, but it's a red flag because of how they leave other people feeling, right? Or alternatively, a red flag could be someone who frequently gets caught out telling lies. And in the moment you find out they have lied, you feel terrible. You feel like you can't trust them. So that's about how it leaves you feeling.
How do you think you overcome loneliness and embrace alone time at the same time?
I think it's about like shifting perspective. I think we often see like solitude as this sad thing, when we can shift our perspective and see it as an opportunity to pour into ourselves, to invest in me time. So I think when it comes to loneliness, think about how you can fill that time with doing things that you love. The times I felt lonely, I would often say, okay, you know what, I'm feeling a bit down, feeling a bit lonely. What can I do to put myself up? Like, I have no shame. I'll go to the cinema on my own. I'll go to a restaurant on my own. I don't care. And I think that has really helped me manage that solitude, because I now see alone time as Toni time, as opposed to, oh, sad by myself, I don't have anybody time. So I think shifting your perspective, doing things you love, and understanding that it's an opportunity for you to be selfish in a way that benefits you.
Let's talk about the ick.
So I think generally when people are referring to the ick, they're referring to being turned off or grossed out over something. The ick is definitely a nuanced subject, but I think people really need to think about it. When they get the ick, they should ask themselves, what is driving this turn off? Is it something genuine and understandable and logical, or is this a projection of something that I'm dealing with? Other times though, the ick can come from a darker place, and I think it's about understanding what is driving your ick. So in my book, I mentioned that sometimes people are comfortable with comfort zones that are unhealthy. And as an example, you might hear someone say, oh, he gave me the ick, and you ask why, and then they reply, he's too sweet, he's too nice. And you have to question, why does that give you the ick? Why is someone being nice to you, or someone being affectionate, or someone being polite or well-mannered off-putting to you? Marinate on the ick, don't be impulsive, consider what is driving the ick, and speak to the other person about said ick. 3 ways to communicate to your partner that it's over.
Make sure that you go straight into telling them that you want it to be over. Just try and make it about you and your needs not being met. Get in quickly, get to the point, but then also make the process quick. Well, I think we have covered quite a lot in that conversation.
We really have. It's been so nice speaking with you.
You too. Thank you for listening to the Benefit broadcast, the Conceal or Reveal edition. Be sure to like and subscribe and tell your friends. Tune in next week for another great episode with a new set of hosts. Bye.